Okay, so thank you all for coming along today. It's great to see so many of you here. It's just myself and Dom are going to talk you through captain's training. Some of you are not captains in this session. Your presence have come along in place of captains who are still to be decided upon for your teams. So many thanks to you for coming along as well. My name is Rob, and I'm a student activities coordinator, and I work I work in the team with main focus on sports. I'll be kind of like your main point of contact for Bucks. I'll go through my role in a moment's time. With regards to the training itself, Dom and myself are going to share it. If you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat at any point. Either put them for everyone to see or direct message Dom or myself, whatever you feel best. So if there's no questions at this point, I should just start the training itself. Okay, so as I say, Dom is going to be co-delivering this training with me, and he's the student activities manager with a focus on sport. I'm Rob Neal, and I'm student activities coordinator. I don't know if Nicola's in the in this Zoom room, but Nicola is our reception manager.
I'm here.
Hi, Nick, and she'll be a familiar face to a lot of you, and she'll be playing like a crucial role alongside her staff with any kind of sports related queries leading up to Bucks fixtures and after Bucks fixtures. Some of the key contact details are there at the bottom of the screen. So you've got our email address, bucks@essex.ac.uk, and the telephone number, which takes you straight through to Nicola's team, which is Colchester 863 211. And then we've got a Bucks number, Bucks mobile, for you to call on Wednesdays with any issues. And the number's there, 07935 134 538. As I say, this is recorded, so if you miss anything first time round, you can always play it back this session at your leisure. So just going into my role in a bit more depth. So I'm the first point of contact for general Bucks inquiries, and I've already gone through that email address. I'm involved in like the management side of Bucks teams and captains. So I'll be dealing a lot with the paperwork and the admin for Bucks play itself, which we'll go into a bit later on. I'll be the person who gives a student who is a captain the administrational access to that side of the role through Bucks play. Also, I'll ensure that results have been uploaded to the Bucks website. I'll also be dealing with competition, team, individual entries for Bucks. I'll be the point of contact with regards to facility bookings with Essex Sport, any amendments you might have as a club that you want to action, if you need to cancel any sessions, be it training sessions, then I'll be the person to come to and arrange that on your behalf. I'll be involved in transport bookings for matches, first aid arrangement, coordinating fixtures with oppositions, and sending out fixture confirmations. So that's kind of my role in a nutshell. So just looking at what we're looking to cover with you today, we're going to provide you an overview of Bucks points, Bucks play for this academic year, the role of the captain, the Bucks fixture admin, transport, match officials, ref receipts, team sheets and player IDs, playing under protest, captain's packs, walkovers, and expenses. So I was going to pass over to Dom at this point.
Afternoon, everyone. So yeah, the important thing to know about Bucks and why we care so much about Bucks at Essex is we do actually have a strategy, which is why we fund the Bucks teams to go and compete in Bucks competitions. And that strategy is all about trying to hopefully at some point in the future achieve a top 25 UK ranking. Just a little bit about where we've, obviously, unfortunately, last year there was no Bucks season or there was no Bucks points associated with the season. But the year before that was actually one of our best ever years. and we, as you can see on the screen, we achieved a total number of points of 1,040.5, which was stopped partway through the season. So it was most of the league matches had been completed, and we just got into the cup round of the cup. So we were on course for our best ever. We did achieve slightly more points in the previous season, as you can see on the screen. We had our highest ever has been 1,182.5 points. How those points are attributed, you get points for where your team finishes in the league. So pretty much all of the teams that we have in Bucks, it doesn't matter where you finish in your league, you will still get points. But obviously, the higher up the league that you finish, the more points that you will get. But we don't just get points for leagues. We also get points if you're in a cup competition and you manage to progress beyond the quarterfinals of the cup. From the quarterfinals onwards, you also get additional cup points. So it is well worth focusing your team selection. If you know that you're in the last 16, don't just, if it's a tough away match, still put out a really strong squad, because you could get some really good quality bonus points, which will all help towards the university's overall score. There's also we don't get as many in the individual points, and what I mean by that is things like the indoor outdoor athletics, the rowing champs. There's a lot of one-off championships which you can find on the Bucks website, where you don't need to have a team. You could be an individual and you can enter those championships. In those competitions, you can. If Rob can go to the next slide, we I can explain it a bit better. Thank you, Rob. So here you can see the breakdown of how it works. So in terms of the higher the division that your team plays in, the more points are up for grabs. So we do have 4 teams that compete in Premier. So as you can see on that chart on the left, winning the Premiership, you can get a maximum of 50 points in your league. The teams that play in the Premiership also play in the Championship Cup competition. So potentially, if you're the best in the country, you could get a maximum of 100 points in Bucks, which is a sizable chunk of our score. Likewise, if you're a team that plays in Tier 1, you will be entered into the trophy competition. So you have a maximum score of 60 points that potentially you could achieve. If you're in Tier 2 or Tier 3, you will also play in what's called the Conference Cup, and that's a regional competition, cup competition in institutions in the Southeast, generally speaking. Tier 4 and below, it depends on the sport, but some sports you'll put into a conference cup, some sports you'll put into a special conference plate. And as you can see there, you can get up to 10 points for winning that. So important things for you to note. We absolutely want to maximize our points. And the way we do that is, first of all, by sending out teams to all our fixtures, including all our away games. There are quite significant penalties in Bucks if we don't fulfill all our fixtures. One of those penalties is that you will give away a walkover. And all you need to really know is that walkovers are bad. Walkovers essentially mean that you lose the match, but not only lose the match, you'll lose 3 points in your league ranking, which could cause you to be relegated. And you will also possibly be fined. And the fines in Bucks are quite severe, particularly for the higher tiers. Potentially, we could receive a fine of up to £750 for every fixture if it relates to the Premier games, and around £250 a fixture for the lower tier. The other thing a walkover will do is will mean any Bucks points that you've earned in your league. If you give one walkover away, you will automatically lose half of them for your university score. So if you were in the Premiership and you ended up winning the Premiership but gave a walkover away, you would actually not get 50 points, you'd get 25 points. But because it's a Premiership, you'd also have a massive fine. If you give 2 walkovers away, you essentially lose all your Bucks points. So it's kind of pointless, no pun intended there, with fulfilling the fixtures. And if you constantly give more than 2 walkovers away, that's when the fines really start to accumulate. So the key thing here is make sure you communicate with us, make sure you do everything possible within your within your capacity to recruit people into the squad. It is far better to send a team, even if it's made up of people that haven't quite got all the experience, than to not send a team and suffer the consequences. Unfortunately, what we see sometimes in some of the London unis is they're not as focused on the Bucks points, and they might just not bother turning up. And whilst we will, try to rearrange fixtures, and we'll come on to that in a bit, everybody has a very tight schedule in terms of being able to complete all the fixtures. So we will more than likely be claiming walkovers against other London universities. So yeah, as is in bold at the bottom, please avoid giving out any walkovers. Next one. So other important things for you to note. So over the last few years, Bucks have been developing an online app. It's by no means perfect, but nonetheless, we have to make sure we use this app. So the app is called Bucks Play. There might be some of you in this room who have previously registered and used Bucks Play. They have been working over the pandemic on developing the app, so it's got less bugs and gremlins, but there are still some that exist. So if you notice any, then you will need to just sort of raise it with us, and we can raise that with Bucks. So essentially, what you will need to do as captains, and I would encourage your members to do the same, is download the mobile app. You can find it on the Android and whatever the other one's called, devices. App. Thanks, sir. And basically, yeah, download the app, and we'll go in more detail in a bit about how you will be able to navigate that. You can also, if you don't have the app, you can use a laptop, desktop, and log in through bucks.playways.com. So as is highlighted there, the app is pretty much used for everything fixture administration wise, and every athlete who wishes to compete in a Bucks team will need to have registered through the app with the university. If you don't register, you can't play. And Bucks, the first year they rolled it out, had a little bit of flexibility in people learning the system. This year, they will be, again, dishing out fines if teams are being fielded with players that haven't registered to Bucks. So please, as one of your jobs, make sure all your members, the best thing to do is just make sure all your members are registered to Bucks Play and logged in against your squad. And it makes it easier for you as captains to be able to select your teams, which we'll come on to in a minute. Next slide, please, Rob. So yeah, as you can see, you can't play without it. So really, really important messaging. Yeah. So back over to Rob.
Just realised I was on mute. Good start. So a captain is defined in Bucks Play as an individual with an institution sports club who is responsible for the players in their team and the selection of these individuals for fixtures, asterisks. And that means this doesn't have to be a team captain and can be coach or other individual with these responsibilities. Okay. So a captain's job is to enter scores directly after a match. That's the best thing to do, just to do that through the app. Dom will probably pick up on this later on for slides that he's going to cover with Bucks Play. But there will be times like when you're in an away fixture or at home possibly, where you just can't get a signal for your phone and you're unable to get the app working. So that's why we always have a backup with the sheets that are in Captain's Pack. So you can have a score sheet where you can just physically write on the score after a game and put that back in the Captain's Pack to be handed over to reception, which we'll go through a bit later on. Also, as a captain, you can select your team for a game on the app and submit that team. There are, like with all of these things here, there are user guides on the Bucks Play website, which we can share with you later on, which gives you kind of a breakdown how to do these different tasks. Again, if the app isn't working, there will be a team sheet within the captain's pack which can be completed, and we suggest actually that regardless of whether the app is working or isn't, that you do complete the score sheet and you do complete the team sheet. You'll also have the opportunity to review the opposing team's sheets, which should you'll be able to do that an hour before kickoff or the start of your game. And I think the idea is that basically every team member on both sides will have their photographic ID student card, and that you can basically counter check each individual student photographic ID card against the name on the tee sheet to see if there are any anomalies. And you could just do general managing team functions within the app as well. Captain's responsibilities. So you're going to be our main point of contact with ourselves in the team, with me in particular. You're going to make sure that all players are signed up to Bucks play before the first match. A lot of students have already signed up to their respective teams, so well done to them. But there will be those that still haven't even registered on the app, haven't joined the appropriate community and signed up for their team, which we can go through later on how to do that. It's also your responsibility to ensure officials are booked for each match. I think the only exception to that is American football, I believe, where the officials are assigned to each fixture within that league. You arrange payments with officials. That could be cash in hand or invoice. You'll organise transport in partnership with myself. I'll be helping you a lot with that. So it might be like if you need a coach for an away fixture, that I'll liaise with yourself in the role of captain to help get the appropriate transport in place, or if you're getting buying train tickets for the squad for an away fixture, that I'll be the point of contact for that as well. And basically it'd be your job alongside the coach to make sure we have a full team for each fixture, to update the team sheet prior to each match, and that's through the app, but also on the physical team sheet, which is in your packs, to enter the scores of the match. You'll actually be doing that for both home and away. Okay, that is where it says if home match, just ignore that. That shouldn't be there. Apologies. Make sure all rules and regulations are adhered to. So in your captain's pack, you'll have the rules and regulations specific to your team sport, and alert ourselves if there are any problems as soon as possible. So that might be an issue with transport. It might be an issue with getting an official. It might be potentially an issue with a fixture needing to be rearranged, which we'll touch upon later. Just passing over to Dom.
So a little bit, these are just some fancy graphics that Bucks have sent across, but good little screen grabs for you to sort of see if you're trying to register on your phone. So as you can see, as with most apps, it is set up so it's mobile friendly, and yeah, you'll be able to see, hopefully it's all working fine, but you'll be able to see, log in to the app. It will recognize what teams you're part of, and you'll be able to see your latest league fixtures. You'll be able to check the team sheets, and as Rob's mentioned, obviously we are just sort of guarding against any issues where you might be out on a cold, wet playing field and there's no Wi-Fi signal or no network signal. So we are, as well as doing this, our backup is we obviously want the team sheets written down, but you can check to see your opposition, and yeah, essentially you can do that on your phone. And then also you should be able to see upcoming fixtures, you should be able to look at results. Pretty much you should be able to do everything that you can do on the desktop. At the moment, there is a bit of a glitch on the system. So if you've got individual members wanting to enter individual championships, so don't worry about leagues and cups, but things like individual golf or surfing championships, I think, are open at the moment. You can only do that using a desktop or a laptop. There seems to be a glitch in the system which they're trying to sort out. So moving on, how do you become a captain on the system? So Rob, can you move to the next slide, please? So 6 simple steps. First of all, as we've mentioned, download the Bucks Play app. Step 2, create your Bucks Play account. Now, some of you may already have a Bucks Play account, and you will just need to probably, if you've forgotten your password, just request a new password. Then what you need to do, crucially, is make sure that you find the appropriate sport that you're going to be captain for. You can, by all means, join other sports that you're interested in, but obviously, for the purpose of captain's training, make sure you join the sport. Say you're the football captain, make sure you join football. Then once you've logged into that sport, you need to find your team, step 4. So, in some of our clubs, we have multiple teams, so make sure you select the appropriate team. And then that's all you do at that point. Step 5 is Rob and myself and other administrators will receive a request and will identify you as our captain and then move you into the appropriate area of the site so that you can then carry out your roles. And once we've done that, you will be notified that that's happened. If you're unsure, you can contact us and we can double check the system. Sometimes we'll come on to some of the problems a bit later, but sometimes you might not appear on the system, and that could be a number of reasons. It might be that the name that you use and the name that you've registered are different and we're searching for the wrong name. It might just be that there's a glitch with the system and we will need to raise that and try and sort that out. Communication is key, so just let us know as soon as you feel there's been a problem and we will try and sort it out. Next slide, please, Rob. So when you've joined and logged in, as you'll see on this image, it will show you all the sports that you are registered to. So in the case of Rob and myself, we've got every single sport, so it takes a while on an app to go through. So that's why we generally use a computer. And you'll also, so there's a scroll bar at the top, left to right, and then also there'll be drop-down boxes where you can see the arrow that says all sports. So you'll be able to navigate the system on the drop down of all the different sports that are involved in Bucks, whereas at the top it will show you all the sports that you've joined. Next slide, please. So again, just another graphic here, really, just that you enter your sport, select your league, and find your league. So this is about if you're trying to find your, if you want trying to search the system and find your specific team. Make a note of. It's pretty simple. It's pretty self-explanatory. Sport. If you know what league you play in, hopefully you do if you're the captain. Sometimes if you're playing in like tier 2B or tier 3B, usually what happens is you'll find the sport, you'll find Southeast Conference tier 2, and then as you can, then it shows it on here, but usually it will bring up tier 2A or tier 3A. And then there'll be a little button at the top, which will be all the alternative leagues in that tier. So you'll be able to click on tier B, or in some sports, there's 4 parts of that tier. There's a tier A, tier as 2A, 2B, 2C, 2D. Next slide, please, Rob. So this is just an image here really of what it looks like on the phone if you're looking for fixtures, and you will be able to click on or tap on any of the bits on the screen to get more information. Next slide. So so fixture confirmations. Important things for you to note. If you haven't gathered this already, Bucks are quite strict with their rules. There are a lot of rules. And if you're interested, you are more than welcome to look at all the Bucks rules and regulations. All you need to do is go to bucks.org.uk, and on their main website, there'll be under sports, there'll be a list of sports regulations that apply to everyone. and then there are some sports specific regulations. It is probably worthwhile as a captain just checking what your sports specific regulations are, and if you're interested, what the general ones are. We have tried our best to understand any updates that may have happened, but to be doubly sure that neither of us are missing anything, it's worth checking. Important thing to note, Bucks have a regulation and institutions don't always follow this, but we will try our best. That fixture details need to be confirmed on the Bucks Play website 14 days in advance. Now, so that means obviously in 2 weeks' time you should know, or 2 weeks before you should know what fixture you're playing, where you're playing. There are some slight changes around the exact playing time, but you should know what fixtures you've got on that date. As it says on the second line, once fixtures have been agreed by institutions, they will be locked in and they will not be able to be amended unless both institutions agree. So that is why sometimes you'll find we don't put on the Bucks Play the exact start time, because we don't want to be forced into a situation where we can't move things around, and the same will happen with opposition. Generally, what will happen in fixture administration, you will get quite a few emails from us, but we will try to limit it to 1 email per week, which will be sent to oppositions, and then we'll send a similar email with a confirmation of those fixtures to yourselves. There might be some specific questions on those emails, so please don't ignore those emails. Please read them carefully. There'll be possibly notes around transportation if you've got an away match, and there might be some questions around referees if it's a home match. Obviously, just to remind you, you are responsible for booking your referees and making sure that they meet the minimum requirements, and we will send some further information out around about that. Yeah, and then there'll be details on there about venues and addresses, which should be on Bucks Play. They don't always correspond, so it might be that an institution hasn't updated its Bucks Play, and it's been changed on the email. So please check the email. The email will be the latest information. Next slide, please. Okay, so hopefully we don't have to do this too much, because it does cause a massive headache in the office. But in terms of rearrangements, we can try to arrange or rearrange matches. But what is really important for you guys to understand is we can only rearrange matches if the opposition agree to it. Because obviously we have to bear in mind that it's not just our 2 teams playing in a league. They'll have other games against other teams on spare Wednesdays that we might have a spare Wednesday. So key thing here, if you can see there's going to be a problem in fielding a team for a certain fixture, then you need to let us know, myself and Rob know, through the Bucks email account, which is bucks@essex.ac.uk. And the more notice you give us, the more chance it will give of us negotiating with the opposition. That's probably the best way of putting that. Unfortunately, there may be some institutions who will, for no reason at all, refuse to move your fixtures. Okay, so you need to be prepared to call upon people to fill your squads if that situation happens. And it's probably worth just noting, if it's less than 48 hours before a fixture, we've obviously said here it's not possible to move the fixture. It is extremely unlikely that we will be able to convince an opposition to move the match, because they will have obviously booked their referees and officials. They'll have booked their facility halls. Some of the London unis don't own their own facilities, and they will have paid a lot of money to hire these facilities. So just be mindful of that. Yeah, let us know. Do not come to us the day before. Obviously, by all means, you can come to us the day before and say you're struggling, and we can try and help put messages out to recruit more people into your teams. But there are lots of ways of trying to recruit extras into your team, and Freshers Fair is an important recruitment tool for every single sports club we have in getting more people joined up to your club. Really, really important. If I could make that any bigger and any bolder, I would. under no circumstances contact your opposition captains to make changes. It is really important because you will get this from some smaller institutions in London who maybe don't have the privilege of Rob and myself sort of helping them out. But all changes must be done through the official channels. So please don't, be careful what you're saying on a Facebook message with an opposition team. If they're trying to move the start time, bear in mind that there are other fixtures and that's not, it's not for you to make those decisions. You just need to make sure you select your teams and that you are booking your referees and officials and that you are hopefully going to win your matches. So next slide, please, Rob. Okay, just another nice graphic from Bucks here. So this is, this is just demonstrating on the app when you are going to select your team. Obviously, you'll be restricted to how many you can select into your squad. As you can see on there, there'll be a list of all the members that are registered to your club or your team. And then as captain, you can go through and you can tick the ones that you want to add into your squad. Once you're happy with that, then put select participants and they should go into your squad. It looks slightly different on a laptop. Next slide, please. So accepting a team sheet. Once you've inputted your team and the opposition, you'll have up until from about 1 hour before the match, I think it is, to confirm that you're accepting the opposition's team sheet. So please do not leave it until less than an hour before your match to submit your team sheet, because otherwise what could happen is the opposition could lock your team sheet and then you could be fined by Bucks because you've not submitted a team sheet. So really, really important. And please don't do that to the opposition as well. Realize how that might have come across. We want to win fairly. As a captain, it's your responsibility to check to make sure that the opposition team, who they've listed, are actually there and they're not filled in people that are not eligible to play. This should reduce the amount of appeals that we receive. If you have any issues on the day, we'll come on to that in a bit about playing on the protest. Next slide, please, Rob. So, what do you need to remember on match day? So we have, obviously, make sure that you have filled out your team sheet on the app and submitted it. It goes without saying, make sure you go to all your fixtures and that you arrive with plenty of time to your fixtures. So please don't, if you are arranging your own transport, please don't plan to arrive just 20 minutes before. If anyone's experienced traveling on the roads between Essex and London, you only need a small hold up and you could be held up, an hour. So I would always recommend aiming to arrive at the venue at least an hour before your match. It obviously gives you time to settle from your journey and also start to prepare your team and your preparation for your competition. If you're providing you're not driving, that's an opportunity moment to submit your team sheet through the app. And also, once you've arrived with plenty of time, you'll have an opportunity to approve the opponent's team sheet. I know a lot of people, you probably actually won't be able to do that until you've met the team, I guess. But yeah, play your fixture and then crucially, submit your result. We will not be judging any teams. If you're not going to be penalised for submitting losses. It's really important that you do submit the result because, again, there'll be fines issued and we don't want to be incurring any fines this season. So if there are issues with your result, please obviously let us know. We'll come on to that in a bit. For some sports, there are additional information that you need to submit on the scores. So rugby, you'll need to submit your number of tries or number of conversions. For sports like fencing and for squash and even tennis and table tennis, I think there'll be individual scores that as well as the overall score for each of the players. So have a look at it carefully and try and make sure you've noted this all down so that we don't have to try and chase you. That's one of the jobs that we can probably try and avoid this year. Next slide, please, Rob. Actually, I think it's over to you, Rob. You're on mute.
I'll get it right eventually. Sorry, people. So if you're a captain or present here today, you've not yet registered on Bucks Play, to just register as a playing member of the team, this is what you need to do. Step one, obviously, download the Bucks Play app, create your account, find and join your sport. So within the app, they're known as communities. So, for example, if you're joining football, it'll be football 2021-2022. Then find your team within that. So University of Essex. And then once you've done that, we'll approve your entry into the squad. And then basically you're ready to play for your team. And captains will be able to view all the students who have registered for their team in order to select them for match day. So in terms of steps to compete in Bucks, first of all, you just need to purchase your club playing membership. And some of these have not been set yet by individual clubs. So I was speaking to a student today who's looking to set the membership fee for their club, and it's something, if you've not yet done so, you'll need to do that and have that available on your website. And then become a member of the Essex Blades. That is free, so that's just important because that covers you insurance wise as a playing member of your team. To create a Bucks Play account, profile, which I've just already mentioned in the previous slide, and join your relevant sports team. And then you might find for certain sports like basketball and fencing, you need an individual membership for their governing body. Okay, I'm just going to pass over to Tom.
So yeah, just back on that previous slide, obviously with those extra fees, some of them are quite expensive, so we may request the club to, because we essentially fund the majority of the costs in Bucks, but we may sometimes ask individual for individual player affiliations for the individuals to pay for that themselves through like a club membership, because obviously there are other benefits to other than just playing. You'll get discount on courses and special access to various things that governing bodies like to give out. So but we'll liaise with the individual clubs that applies to. So in terms of player eligibility, so yeah, in terms to play in Bucks, and we might just need to check that this hasn't changed. I don't think it has, but you do need to obviously be a registered student at the University of Essex, and you need to be studying on a course that is the equivalent of at least 60 credits. Undergrads and postgrads can compete in Bucks, and but if you're a master's student, postgrad student, you do need to be studying, must be studying at least 50% of full-time equivalent. If you are, crucially, if you've got any students who are on a term abroad, year abroad, or even placement students, they can still play in Bucks. There are certain requirements. So placement students, obviously, so long as their placement isn't longer than 12 months, but I've not really heard of anyone who's on a placement longer than 12 months. So generally speaking, that's fine. And what you might find actually is if you've got, you might have members who actually are living in places like London, where you might be struggling to get people out to an away match, who are more than happy to jump on the tube and go to the match and play. So make sure you are communicating with all your members, because you might be surprised to see who's all over the country. yeah, this doesn't really apply to anyone other than, I guess, live in the other offices, but sabbatical officers can play. So who knows, maybe call them up if you're short of a player or two, and they can still compete as they are registered students. This bottom one actually is not 100% correct. We are looking into it. There's been a slight Bucks rule change. So potentially some smaller institutions, if they have fewer than 2,000 students, can request to play in a local larger institution. So in the case of Colchester Institute, maybe sixth form college, where they have small numbers of higher education students studying, there's the potential that they might actually be able to play. That was a new rule, as I said, that's brought in this year. And we're still looking into the specifics, but we will circulate more information as we know. Next slide, please, Rob. So player attendance, yeah, tricky one this. So as a university, we have a long-standing agreement that the university will try its best to avoid scheduling any lectures, any compulsory lectures on a Wednesday afternoon. I have heard some stories of students that have received their timetables and they have got surprise lectures on a Wednesday afternoon. We would ask that anybody who's aware of any specific courses that have got that you let us know as soon as possible, so we can try and flag them with the relevant departments and our sports board. The rule doesn't apply, unfortunately, to postgrad students. So you may find that you are absolutely fine for home matches, but for away matches, you might have a bit of a struggle. That said, if anyone does have a lecture or class or anything that they need to get out of, we do have an official process for individual students to be authorised absence, and that will be through your My Essex portal. And on there will be a link to request an authorised absence, and you'll then obviously notify that it's to do with sport, and that will eventually make its way through to our office. This is why we need to have the team sheets, because we will only approve the authorised absence if your name is down on that team sheet. If you've just had a hangover from a Tuesday night and trying to get out of the lecture, that won't wash, because we will just reject the authorised absence. So please don't abuse the system, but you will also on there need to give us as much information as possible, so it makes it easier to find your name on the team sheet. Don't just say second team, because that will make it really difficult for us to know what sport you're on about. Please state we should know the day. And this doesn't just apply to Wednesdays. If you're going away for a competition and the competition might be a Friday evening, you can still apply the exemption on any of those days. So you might be staying in accommodation on a Tuesday night, and you might need to miss Wednesday morning lectures. So yeah, it's a really good tool to use. Please use it. Please share it with your members. You might find you've got some students who, if they know that they can use this, they're more willing to play for away matches. Okay, back over to Rob. Unmute.
So for team selection, you're going to, through the app, find your team within your sport, select the relevant fixture, and pick your athletes for your team. I think Dom's already kind of mentioned this, but it's going over what we shared before. Team sheets. So they're now electronic and can be submitted via the app. So we've spoken about that, haven't we? You've got a step-by-step guide within on this web link, which shall I put that into the chat now, Dom? Yeah, just gonna have to quickly just bear with me. So Final slide. Sorry.
That's all right. You carry on, Rob. I'll put it in the chat.
Oh, you can put it in the chat. Okay. Thank you, Dom. So team sheets need to be completed 1 hour prior to the start time. And 1 hour before the match, you'll be able to review the opposition's team sheet and approve it, disprove it. So some of this stuff we're just going over again. As I said, please complete the paper-based one within the Captain's Pack 2. I'm just going to pass back over to Dom now.
Okay, cool. So team selection, and this is usually where we get playing under protest forms from maybe opposition, or we will do it ourselves. It's not as clear cut of if you're in the first team, you play in the first team. There are certain things that are okay. Morally, they might not be quite okay, but we'll just work through them because this is what Bucks is saying. So in most cases, if you're selected into a higher team, a first team, once you have played a certain number of matches for that first team, you cannot step down to the second team or the third team, okay? In most cases where you're playing in a lower team, third team, fourth team, it is absolutely okay for you to be called up to the higher teams. So in the chart that you can see on the screen, the top left, you can see there's a player who played the first 3 matches in the second team, then got called up for the fourth team, maybe that week where they struggled and needed to call some people up, but then returned to the second team for the majority of their matches, and then again in week 8 they were called up again. That's fine. Sometimes you might find that a fresher might come in, you might put them in the second team to start with in the bottom left-hand graph, and they might play the first term, for instance, in the second team, but then they might have improved or made themselves known that they are a better player, and you've called them up to the first team for the remaining of the season. That's absolutely fine. The other way, bottom right-hand corner, you might have a player, again, who in the first term played in the first team, but then suddenly as a club you've done some recruitment and there's a load of better players that you've managed to find, and as a consequence that person who was playing first team is no longer ranked in the first team squad and they can step down. But this is okay providing that the number of matches that they have played for the first team is not more than 50%. So most sports, and it does vary in some teams, most sports will have 10 fixtures scheduled. So the moment that someone has played 5 matches, which is 50% of scheduled matches, they will be team tied and cannot step down from that team. The top right is what you cannot do, is where clearly that person is a first team player and is occasionally stepping down. We do see this happen. We have seen this happen in the past. Maybe the first team hasn't got a match 1 week and the second team has got a match and you're desperate to win the game. Please avoid doing that. Please. It's not great morale for the second team player that lost their spot because you put a first team player in there and they were still available. Obviously, there might be odd exceptions, but if in doubt, talk to us about it. Don't just assume you can do it. Okay, and hopefully I've explained some of the different ways of being selected into teams. Next slide, please, Rob. I think we'll skip over this. This is just showing you a little bit of a screenshot, what you'll see on your phones once you've logged in. Okay, so entering scores. The home team is responsible for entering the score. However, the away team can still enter the score. It is important as a captain, as we've mentioned this a few times, that you put in the correct details when you're inputting the score. Please put in the details as soon as you've completed the match. Don't leave it till after a night out at Fed, because you will forget and then we will get fined. So once you've submitted the the score, we will, as the administrators, review that and approve that. And then once the opposition have approved our approval, the result will be confirmed and cannot be changed after that point. Okay. If you see an opposition that's entered the wrong score, there's an issue, please raise it with us as soon as possible. Because again, if you don't raise it with us, we'll assume that the scores are fine and we'll approve it. You can email us, as we keep mentioning, at bucks@essex.ac.uk. Or you can send them, I believe you can send a message on the app, but probably best just to use the email, and we'll be checking that more often. Okay, next slide, please. Important note, which is why we ask you to do this straight away. We must enter and record all results on Bucks Play no later than midday the next working day. So if you're on a Wednesday fixture, that's 12 o'clock on the Thursday. If it's a weekend fixture, it's 12 o'clock on a Monday. Please bear in mind that we also need to schedule time to do this, to do the authorization. So we are requesting that you let us know straight after your match, and it gives us potentially, I'll probably be working on a Wednesday evening in reality, so I can check that and see if there's any issues and authorize that. As we keep mentioning, there's a lot of disciplinary action that can happen with us if we don't do this. And also important to note, if you notice that any of your opposition haven't done this, can you flag it with us and we will chase the opposition administrator, because we don't really want to see them getting fined either. We want to keep good relationships. Next slide, Rob, please. Yeah, I think we've covered this. And just before you go out, before you do anything, straight after the match, send us the result. And also this year, what we're asking, we've got a type form, which I'll just quickly put that in the chat. This is, we really want to be able to shout about all of your successes or near successes. And we want to sort of be able to shout to the university about it. So in this type form that I've put in the chat, there's an opportunity for you to upload pictures or images. If you're watching a match, take some images, send it across to us. We'll make those people famous. And yeah, we want some good stories. In the past couple of years, we've had some, it's been a real sort of delight to, there's budding journalists amongst you to read about the highs and lows of a football match or a lacrosse match or whatever it is. Try and keep it clean if you can. Otherwise, we'll just edit it. But yeah, again, maybe write the story on the bus on the way back, and that would be good for us to be able to share. Next question, please. Next slide, please. Ian. Okay, so entering scores. As I've kind of touched on this already, for a lot of the sports, it will just be a simple, 1-0, rugby might be 30-17, whatever. For some sports, there'll be, and that's what we call basic. For additional sports, there'll be the additional things like number of tries, number of conversions, and then the complex sports, the racket sports, generally speaking, where it's the number of points won on each game. And the reason why we have to input that is there's some specific sports-specific rules about if there's a tie in a league or if there's a tie in a cup match, it will count back. It will go back to individual points accumulated. So we have won and lost fencing matches because we scored one extra point in one match, and that put us through to the next round of the cup. Please fill out those results and keep note of it during those matches. I think next slide's over to you, Rob.
Okay, so you've got some useful help guides on Bucks Play. If you're going on, this is, I think, this is a screenshot here on the left-hand side of the desktop version. So where it says links, that will take you through to some useful guides. A lot of them are very useful, particularly in the role of captain. So I put in the chat a few moments ago a link to one of those guides, which features via this link here. So it's making you aware of that. I found it very useful when I've just like been skilling myself up in an administrational role, just to help me navigate through the app. So yeah, it's well worth having a look at those guides when you get a moment. Okay. Match officials. So it's like the captain's responsibility to book their own match officials. And I mentioned earlier that American football, they're booked through BAFRA. And for those other sports there, we'd expect the captains to book their own officials for those their fixtures. Continuing the theme of match officials, as I said, captains must book their officials, ensuring that correct level of official is booked. And this varies from like, depending on the league you play in and depending on the tier you play in. I've got an appendix 5 there, explains the level of qualification required for each sport. I won't go on to appendix 5 now, but this is a screenshot from netball, and you'll just see like for teams that are competing in the Premier level of Bucks, that for officials there's 2 required. A minimal level qualification is B, recommended level qualification is A, and the official would have to be neutral. But then if you like go down to say tiers 2 to 4, the minimum level qualification goes down to C, and there's no recommended level of qualification. And let's go back. No recommended level of qualification, and the officials don't have to be neutral. Neutral should be taken to mean not being a current student, a member of staff, full-time or part-time, a member of the team, club, or athletic union equivalent of the institution playing entity concerned, or being closely related to any member of the club. A member of the club shall be taken to mean any player, coach, elected officer, or team official. It's really, really crucial, just at the bottom there, that you must get written confirmation of bookings with officials, so like emails or texts, because if an official cancels last minute, we can provide evidence that they were booked. Another thing I just want to make you aware of, which hopefully a lot of your members might be interested in, is as a department, we're looking to get as many students as that we can fund qualified to become officials, timekeepers within their sports. So what I'll be doing over the next couple of days is putting together a type form, and I'll send it out to all presidents of clubs and captains, which will make you aware of the qualifications that your members could look to achieve, which we will fund, with the aim of basically getting students to officiate games where a neutral official isn't required. So that would just be really, really useful to have, because sometimes it could be a real issue to get referees, umpires, line judges, or whatever it might be in place for a game. So if we have students within our ranks who have those qualifications which are required, then things are going to run a lot more smoothly. So yeah, I will send out that type form once it's complete. So moving on. Officials' receipts. I say it should be the captain's job to greet the official before the match. You can pay the officials in cash. It's important to obviously find out the cost when booking an official. Complete the official's receipt, and then you can upload the receipt to the following type form. I don't know if Dom, if you could put that in the chat, that'd be great, thank you. And then you can produce, take a JPEG of the receipt and upload that via the type form. And once authorized, you'll be able to collect your refund from SU reception, where Nicola and her team will be able to give you your refund. And it says at the bottom there, no receipt, no refund. Okay.
Just a slight amendment on that.
Yeah.
If we're using an online application for finance expenses, but obviously if you don't have bank details, then in the extreme circumstances, Nicola does have a provision. But I don't know, Nicola, if you wanted to step in and just if I've missed anything on that bit.
No, obviously the old way we used to do refunds, I think they all came through reception. Obviously now due to COVID, we have swapped to an online method. But as Dominic said, if you can't, for whatever reason, get it through bank transfer, we do have a form you can complete and we can arrange that from reception.
Also, if the cost of the officials is quite a lot of money and you don't have that amount of money, you can come and speak to us at reception and we may be able to provide you the money, but you'll need to sign off in advance and bring back the receipt. And that is a possibility, but you'll need to speak with us in advance. Don't just assume we can do that. Okay, shall I take the next ones? The next ones we're going to talk about are transport.
Before we go on to that, Dom, just had a, because I'm new to the role, so I won't know the answer to every single question, but I've just had someone message me about how to recruit officials for games. So I don't know if, Dom, you can shed any light how captains can go about doing that for their individual sports, please.
Yeah, no worries. So I would say, obviously look at the match official requirements. If it's obvious that you're going to need neutral officials, then best place to approach would be your national governing bodies. A lot of them, bigger national governing bodies, have regional officials coordinators. So for football, the Essex FA will have links. They actually have a list of all the qualified officials sort of in the area. And then it's an old-fashioned way of sending an email, putting a request in, yeah, hopefully you get friendly with a few local officials who are quite happy to come down on a Wednesday afternoon and earn some beer money. And yeah, if you're not sure how much they should be getting paid, you can check with us and we can confirm what we've paid them in the past. Obviously, the longer you leave it, the less officials that will be available, as they do, you know, there's a limited supply, and in some sports there are fewer officials than are required, like lacrosse, for instance, which is why institutions are required to have their own officials. It is always worth having, even though the rules might say they have to be neutral, in the situation that there are no officials available, we can always suggest to the opposition that we do have non-neutral qualified officials, and sometimes institutions are just happy to play the match with a qualified official. So always worth covering your backs just in case you have a situation with an official who you might have booked is maybe unwell, maybe in the times of COVID, maybe they have to isolate, and the last thing you want is to not play the match because your referee's got COVID, and you know that could have a massive implication if they're the only one who's got booked. So if you have any specific questions, drop us a message, or hold on at the end and we can talk in more detail. But yeah. So we'll move on to transport. So important thing to note for league and cup matches, we will provide the cost of the fixtures. We will provide the cost of transport. We will provide the cost of the facility. The referee cost will reimburse. And the reason we do that pretty simply is because you're generating lots of bucks points for the university, and it's an important part of recognising and giving you your best student experience. We don't want you having to try and pay loads of money to go and fulfil a fixture in Portsmouth. So what are the best methods to use? It's worth stating, although we have a budget, it is quite restricted, and we have over 800 fixtures to administer this year. Potentially, if you all do well in the cups, it will be over 1,000 fixtures. So our preferred method of transport would be if you've got players with individual cars, particularly if you are smaller teams. That is definitely the most cost-effective way and probably more comfortable way of travelling. Again, if you've got small teams, it might be more cost-effective if you're playing in the centre of London to travel by train, and we'll come on to it in a minute about we can provide support on that. If you have players or coaches that can drive, like minibuses, We can look into hiring external minibuses, and that's a function that Nicola will be able to look into and support you. But do not leave it till you need to give us as much notice as possible if that's one of your intentions, because we work with a local provider and they book their buses out very quickly. In terms of coaches, I would suggest that the wheelie kind, they are probably our last resort, purely because with a coach, you're talking a minimum of about £600 to hire a coach versus a car to somewhere might be £50. Obviously, you can get more people on a coach, I get that. But unless we have multiple teams, or it's a large team, something like the American football team, which has to have 40 odd players, it's sometimes not cost effective to send a coach. The other reason why we'd be hesitant about booking coaches is if we have a situation where we have to let the coach company know 2 weeks in advance. Quite often, if we let them know less than 48 hours before that a match isn't happening, we will still have to pay the cost of that coach. And the way things are with Bucks, legitimately a fixture could be cancelled within 48 hours of the match. So we will let you know on the weekly fixture confirmations what your mode of transport will be. Obviously, let us know in advance if you know that you're going to want to travel by train every week, or you know that you've got drivers each week. We'll factor that in rather than just assume that you're all playing in one place and we'll put a coach on. In terms of taxis, unfortunately, we will not refund taxi costs. However, if you as a club feel that's really important, you can use your own funds to support that method, that cost. It's just taxi company costs are quite expensive. Next slide, please. So, if you are planning to go by car, we will repay the driver 25p per mile travelled, and we will do random checks just to make sure you're not saying you went to London via Newcastle. Obviously, we have a rough idea how much these things cost to go. The driver will need to submit to the Blades account a copy of their driving license, the front and back. This is just to make sure that they are actually able to drive and have an in-date license and not been banned, and a copy of their up-to-date insurance document. Again, this is to make sure that the car that the students are traveling in is roadworthy. So once we've got those two, the student will be able to reclaim their money. As captains, it's worth just double checking they've sent those forms, as you should never just assume. So next, we'll obviously encourage teams where possible to use the cheapest mode of transport. But we appreciate that sometimes that's not possible, and we obviously do. It's a competition, so we do obviously want you to get there and be competitive. So we will look at that in more detail. Trains. So within the Student Activities Office, as we're called now, we have a business account with the train line. So you won't need to pay for any train tickets. We will sort all of that out. And we also have an agreement that with the business account, if the ticket doesn't end up getting used, we will get a refund. Whereas if you book an individual train ticket, that's not always possible. We do ask that if you are requesting to go by train, this will apply probably more for some of the teams that compete at weekends, that you let us know at least 48 hours before your intended travel date, just so we can make sure we book in time to do your tickets. It does take 15-20 minutes to sort out. For some of the bigger travel trips, it can take a little bit longer. And as you can see, so let us know by the Thursday afternoon for weekend fixtures, and let us know by Monday morning really for Wednesday fixtures. Pretty self-explanatory. You'll get an email on the booking, or one of the teams done the booking, and you'll have a reference number on that. When you go to the train station, you simply go to the ticket machine. You can put any old card in, as long as it's got a chip on it. Don't worry, you won't get charged. That's just to start the machine up, and then you put the reference number in, and hopefully the machine will churn out all your tickets. One important thing to note about trains is we will always book it used to be called like a family travel card. It's a multi-group saver. That means that you must all travel together. If your group gets split up and you get caught by the train inspector, you will all be fined. And those fines aren't cheap on the trains. So please stay together when you are traveling, and I think generally the rule is you need to be in groups of minimum of 3. We have unfortunately had a couple of fines in recent years where an individual decided to come back on a different train for whatever reason, and then they got a fine. But yeah, next slide, please. So with the external hired coaches and minibuses, kind of touched on all that already, but one of the things to also be aware of is if we do put loads of people on coaches, it might mean that you need to leave slightly earlier to go to the away fixture, or you might be waiting for other matches to finish. We will always try and work with the coach company to identify. It might be that there are 2 unis on the way down south, and it's like a 10-minute detour. So you may find that you're on a coach with 2 other teams that are 20 minutes away from where you are, and they'll be dropped off en route. So please don't automatically just get up and get off the coach when it stops the first time. Otherwise, you might find yourself in the wrong location. Also, please make sure you listen to the instructions from the driver about what time and where they're picking you up, because we have had students left behind where they weren't at the meeting location on time, particularly when there's 2 or 3 stops. Rob and myself will be responsible for ultimately responsible for the bookings, and we will let you know as soon as we've got those booked. As always, any questions, bucks@essex.ac.uk. Okay, next point.
Dom, I've just got a question. I'll try to answer it, and feel free to intervene if I'm saying the wrong thing. I just had a question. How would we know which travel option we could take for a specific fixture? I mean, my advice on that would be it would depend on how many cars you had within your team which could transport the amount of people needed to a fixture. Obviously, if you had the right number of cars, then it would be the car option you would take. If you were aware, if you had more players than there were cars, you might then find that you used a combination of cars and train, and that you could approach us as a team to get a multi-group saver ticket for those additional people who couldn't be transported in cars. It might be that where cars aren't available, it would just be sole use of a train, or if you've got like I know, for example, we've got rugby men's 1 and 2 due to play an away fixture at the same venue on the same day. It could be that they could it might be more cost effective to send them on a coach potentially. So Dom, is there anything else you'd like to add to that? Or
no worries. Obviously we will keep an eye on the costs, and if you're a sports team that's costing a significant chunk of funding, this is just a warning that we may call you in for a meeting to discuss about other means of generating support for that budget. I've not had to do that just yet, but it did get quite tight 2 years ago in terms of the budget we had and what we had to spend, and we need to make sure that we are using the money wisely. Appreciate that bigger teams will cost more to transport, but yeah, it's important that we are accommodating all clubs at the university and not just ones that are necessarily in the higher leagues. But yeah. So captain's packs, as we've already mentioned a couple of times, an important thing for you as captains to take with you. It has all the important forms that you need. It's really important that, as we've mentioned about results and playing under protest issues, that you let us know, that it doesn't have to be the captain, I should just add, but that somebody returns the captain's pack or the completed documents from the captain's pack and hands that into the SU reception on Square 3 no later than 11 o'clock on the following working day. So again, Monday for weekend matches, Thursday, God, I lost my track of my days, Thursday for Wednesday matches. And the reason for that is just purely if there's anything that we need to flag, we have deadlines ourselves that we have to meet. And then also making sure that those playing under protest forms are, if you do have an issue with a match, it's really important that you complete a playing under protest. If you don't complete the playing under protest form, you will not have any form of appeal. And if you email that to our Bucks account with a high importance, we'll know that to look at that first and try our best to resolve that situation for you. And you can collect your captain's packs from the SU reception once they're not quite ready yet, but we will send a message out when they're ready. As a captain, you will keep it'll be like in a wallet, like a clear wallet probably, with all the forms. You keep hold of that, and then when you return the form been completed, we will just supplement you with additional paper if you need it. Next point, Rob. Do you want to talk about this bit, Rob?
Yep, no problem. So in your captain's packs, you'll have copies of the team sheets, which will need to be populated by hand for every fixture. The playing under protest form, which Dom just mentioned a short while ago, an accident report form, specific regulations for your sport, and officials' receipts. So enough to last the whole of the autumn term. Like Dom said, if you could get those handed in for Wednesday fixtures by no later than 11 o'clock on the Thursday, and for weekend fixtures no later than 11 o'clock on the Monday. And any sheets that you've completed, such as your team sheets, they'll be handed in to Nicola and her team, and they will replace that completed sheet with a blank team sheet. Moving on.
Okay, I promise you we haven't got that much left to go through. You'll be pleased to hear. We've got some questions in a bit. So I mentioned playing on a protest form. So regulation 12.11 basically says that if, as a team, upon arrival, you feel that upon arrival or during the fixture, the conditions do not adhere to those outlined by Bucks regulations, which is why it's important to understand them, or fixture confirmation, then you should complete a playing under protest form or equivalent as soon as grievance has been made aware or you've noticed it. And it is only where an actual regulation has breached that you can appeal against. So you can't appeal against a referee, which we get all the time, because you feel that the referee has been biased towards the other team. You can appeal against a referee if you have proof, and the evidence is important, that they are not neutral and they're meant to be neutral, or if you suspect that they don't have the qualification, we can run checks. We do have to be a bit careful. We have got ourselves into a bit of hot water accusing referees of not being qualified and then suffering the wrath of the national governing bodies. So with the playing under protest form, they will be submitted to us, and I will make the ultimate decision on whether or not I choose to submit that on behalf of the university, based on my knowledge of what's been allowed and what's not been allowed. We sometimes have to go through quite a long process with Bucks, and then you have to call a special meeting of people. So if it's if you've been battered like 11-0 in a football match, and it's a fairly weak argument, it's likely we're probably not going to put the appeal in. We will communicate that with you and with our reasons why. But no appeal form, if you don't complete an appeal form and you don't submit it straight away, the appeal obviously can't be submitted to Bucks, and the result will stand as is. The other thing to note with the playing under protest form is There's a section on there for the home captain or the appealing captain to fill out, but there's also a section on there for the defending captain, if you like, to put some comments. Both captains must sign that form. It's a physical paper form. They must sign that form. And if the opposition refuses to sign it, or you refuse to sign it, if the opposition's appealing, you will automatically forfeit that match. You use that space to lodge your appeal. And sometimes we will do a counter appeal against an appeal. And then sometimes there's a counter appeal against the counter appeal. So it can get quite tasty. It's probably one word to use. But anyway, hopefully it doesn't happen. Yeah, if you foresee there being any issues before you play, let us know and we can look into that to avoid this whole discussion. I think we're going to come on to some situational questions, something for you guys to try and answer. Okay, so quick question. Anyone, you can use the chat. What information do you feel that you would need to complete in a playing under protest form? I may have just told you half of it. Feel free to use the chat. Or someone can unmute. Are you all there? Go on, someone. Don't leave me hanging. What should go on a plan under protest form? Joel's just giving me a thumbs up. Come on, Joel. I'm gonna... Or Regan? Oh, you're all quiet. I hope you're going to be a bit more talkative during the season. So, right, okay, let's move on to the next slide. We'll tell you the answer. So, what you need to do is fill out all the fixture details, state the specific rules that you believe have been broken and explain briefly. This is where you might want to phone the office if you're not sure what the regulations are, and we can inform you and look into that. Captain must initial next to each regulation to state that you're aware that that person, it's to prove that you haven't just added a regulation in on the journey home, and so that's important why it's been initialed. And opposition have the opportunity to write a statement. As I said, both captains must sign, and I believe sign and put the time of the fixture or when you've signed it. That's important because if you were saying something about, I don't know, that you found out something before the match but you didn't raise the appeal until after you lost the match, then Bucks will throw that one out as well. And yeah, I've already touched on that last bit, but 12.3.2.1 is all about refusing to sign a form and the disciplinary action that could happen as a result of that. Next question, Rob. Okay, I know the opposition has breached the regulation, but I do not complete the playing under protest form. Can I appeal? Can I appeal the match afterwards? Any thoughts? Feel free to use the chat. Yes or no? No. Any other thoughts? Okay, we'll move on, Rob. The answer is correct. No, you can't. The form must be completed as soon as the grievance is noted. As such, if you arrive at the fixture and it's not for purpose, fit for purpose, so there might be issues around the line markings, or you must fill out the form straight away and ensure it's signed. If you are aware of a breach and you fail to do that, then you essentially are accepting the conditions of play and therefore cannot play under protest. So one example is where if you were told before you went to a match that the other team haven't got a qualified referee or a qualified neutral referee, and you still travel to the match, you are accepting that you are going to play under those conditions. The other team would need to prove that they've written to us in writing before we've left. If it might be another question, I'll come on to that later. We'll move on to the next one, Rob. So I think that's all the questions. What I was going to say was, if you have already left for an away match which is why it's important that we note down when you're leaving. Let's say you're traveling to London and you left at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then we get a phone call at 10:30 or after you've left to travel, saying that the facility is not available, the ref's not turned up, or any other sort of legitimate excuse. You will automatically be able to replay your away match at home. So we've had it where, team has left and 10 minutes later, we will obviously, this is why it's important we have your contact numbers. We'll obviously contact you as soon as possible, because it might be you haven't actually got on the train yet, or you've only just left Colchester, and so you can turn around and not be wasting your trip. But that's an important one to note. Making an appeal. Again, we've gone over this so many times because it's really important, but it's important that you let us know by 10 a.m. on the Thursday if you have got an appeal, which is why I'm saying email us straight after, or 10 a.m. on the Monday if it's a weekend fixture. We just won't have enough time to submit the appeal if you submit it any later than that. Please don't hand a form in 2 weeks later and expect us to complete the plan under protest appeal, because the deadline would have passed. Next slide, please. Okay, walkovers. Probably stressed it enough at the start. This is when a team concedes or forfeits a fixture to the other team, i.e. not attending the fixture and handing the win to the opposition by default. With regards to when you can claim a walkover, you can claim a walkover if the opposition cancels their match within 48 hours, unless it was cancelled because of bad weather, snow, for instance, frozen pitch, or other circumstances. This year, there are some special rules around COVID, and if you can prove that your team has been sort of cast to one side with COVID isolation, crucially, this is based on what the government says. So the uni might have a special rule, another rule, and we'll have to have a look at that in the coming weeks. You may be able to get away with what we call an involuntary walkover. But ultimately, try and play all your matches. If there's any issues, talk to us. Next slide, please, Rob. It's in yellow because it's important. Always put out a team for all your fixtures, including your away matches. If every university team just played their home matches, there wouldn't be any matches, because you need an away team to play the match. Recap, walkovers are bad. They lose points for you, for your team, for your league points. You could get relegated. You could get fined. We might throw you out of bucks. And it will also, any of you that are looking for standards, it will also affect your standards application. So please avoid walkovers. Okay, so some changes. We've recapped all this, but all participants need to be registered on Bucks Play and in their respective team. Team sheets must be completed on the app. Scores can be submitted by captains on the app, but also on desktop. All scores must be submitted by no later than 12 o'clock the next working day. And as captains, you will be responsible for keeping hold of your captain's packs and returning any completed forms as soon as possible after your match the following morning. Last two slides. So this is really obviously about social media. It's really important. We would like to really sort of shout about all the wonderful work that you guys do for your teams. And if you've got images of matches, you want to do some sort of promo, please use hashtag #BackTheBlades. That's our main hashtag we use for Blades. And if you are not already following us, our social media address for Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter is @EssexBladesSU. And we will try our best to retweet and share any stories or anything that you want us to share. Just get in touch with us and we will do that. And I think that's the last slide, other than any questions. Do we have any questions in the room? Are you all awake still?
I have a question.
Hello, Adrian.
Yes, I'm a president of cycling, and cycling is not like a team sport. Like you can do individuals, and then I just download the app, the BlocksPay app, and then I'm not sure that how can I create a team. And also I look some events say this most of them is quite individuals, isn't it? So I'm not sure how it is going on, and you say away and home match like in cycling we don't have, so I'm not sure that. Yeah.
Yep. No worries, that's fine. Yeah, really good point. So in terms of cycling is one of the sports where it's what we call individual championships. So you can also go to the main Bucks website, which I'm going to put on the chat. So on, oh, hang on, sent that to the wrong person. On that link that I've just put in the chat is the main Bucks website. Under sports, you'll be able to see all the sports that Bucks offer, and then you'll be able to find your specific sport. So in your case, cycling. It will also show you on that cycling part of the website when all the events are and when the entries will open and when the entries will close. So it won't be until the entries open for specific events that you will see it on Bucks Play. In terms of recruiting teams, some of that information we've gone through is not relevant, just because you don't have home and away matches. You'll be playing or competing your events at neutral venues. Sometimes there's opportunities for us as an institution to host one-off championships. So have a look at the website. If there's any opportunities that come out, let us know if you're interested in trying to put a bid together to host. Later in the year, there might be opportunities. There's something called the Bucks Nationals, and that's where a lot of the individual championships like athletics and climbing and cycling and about 15 different sports. There's like a mini Olympics for Bucks, and that usually takes place in Sheffield around March time. So obviously a little bit further away, but we will be communicating with the student population about anybody who wants to get involved.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
And also I have another question, but I'm not sure it is relative in this section, is in Colchester, we have another big cycling club. It's called Colchester Rover Clubs. I'm not sure that because sometimes they will hold some event, it's not regarding to Bucks, it's like a kind of race. So I'm not sure that my members or even me can join it.
Yeah, so maybe we'll pick that up with you outside of this meeting about setting up a link with the local clubs. There's a few clubs, but I've just put it in the chat. If you don't have any questions, you're welcome to leave. Thank you very much all for your time. If you do have any questions, hang on and we'll try and answer them. And this video will be available. I think most people have left, but this video will be shared on the exec resources page. Any other questions? No. Joel, are you there? No. Adrian, do you have any other questions?
No, just about that one. Like, can I?
Okay, if you would just see if who's TN2163, you there? Okay, I think Rob, you might want to remove them if they don't think they're there anymore. Okay, perfect. Well, do you want to stop the recording, Rob? Just pause the recording. Yeah, so and Nick